All right, welcome to Tuesday night Bible study for RU. I miss you guys. Let's go ahead and, what are you doing?
I'm saying I miss them too.
They can't see you. You're back
But
there.
they can hear me.
Yeah. Anyway, Nat's here too. He's going to be working the camera tonight. So we're just going to run this live. We took the dogs out of the house and we're just going to see what happens. So let's open in prayer. Lord Jesus, first off, we just want to say thank you for your great kindness toward us, for your salvation. Thank you for the blood of Jesus Christ. Thank you for the Holy Spirit who not only teaches us all things, but comforts us. And we pray, Father, that you would guide our words tonight. And just as we open up your book, God, where the words of the Lord are right, speak to us in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so last time we got cut off somewhere around Genesis chapter 6 and verse 18, 19, 20, right in there. That was because something happened with the camera, so hopefully it won't happen tonight. But let's go ahead and look at verse 17. This is the Lord talking to Noah. So Genesis 6:17. And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life, from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. But with thee will I establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee. And of every living thing of all flesh, two of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They should be male and female. That's where we got cut off at. Of fowls after their kind, and of cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind, two of every sort shall come unto thee to keep them alive. A lot of people say, well, how in the world did Noah go out into all the world and find all these animals while he was also building a boat? Well, the Bible is very plain. It says, they shall come unto thee. So this was a supernatural thing.
It was a migration.
It was a migration. Everybody they woke up in the morning, they said, they got to go to Noah's. So they all went to Noah's. And it says, to keep them alive. And he says also in verse 21, and take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be for food for thee and for them. The word food there is just, it's provender, it's victuals, it's food, it's stuff you can eat. They're going to have animals in the ark, so they're going to have seeds and grain and straw, but they're also going to want to do things like pack some bread or, things like that. I don't know if they were eating meat at this point, maybe some jerky, but they're basically loading down the ark also with foodstuffs so they can survive this thing. Obviously, it's going to be a long haul, and we're going to see just how long. Verse 22 said, thus did Noah, according to all that God commanded him, so did he. And we were talking last week about this before we got cut off. Wow, what a testimony. Of all that God commanded Noah, he did it. He was like the original Nike symbol. Just do it. He's like, I got this, God. I'm doing it. How long did it take to build the ark? A long time. We talked about 100 years last year, or last week whenever we were talking about it. 100 years. He stayed focused. He got up in the morning. I'm sure he had his side things. He had to feed his family or whatever, but he was focused. He had to get the plans drawn. He had to bring in the wood. He had to bring in the iron. He had to bring in all the materials for this thing. Had to think about it. It wasn't just something he said, hey, I think I'm going to go out in the middle of the field and build an ark today. This thing was huge. And we talked about how it was 450 feet long by 75 feet wide by 45 feet high. As tall as a 30-foot building, then laid over on its side. It's just massive. Okay, now we're going to start.
30-story building.
30, what did I say?
30 foot.
Oh yeah, 30-story building. Silly goose. It's hard to do this by yourself.
It happens.
All right. Chapter 7, verse 1. And the Lord said unto Noah, and the first thing I got out of that I was praying about it, was that personal relationship with God and how important it is. He says, "Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation." The word "thee," Thee, means that in the Hebrew, that word was singular. He didn't say, "I saw your wife was righteous, I saw your kids were righteous, I saw their wives were righteous." He says, "No, I saw you." But in his mercy, he saved his family as well. Over in the book of Acts 16, Paul is in jail. There's an earthquake, and the jailer comes in and says, "Sirs, what must I be saved?" And what does Paul say? "Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, and thou shalt be saved, and thy house." God is merciful. It is a verse that I claimed for a long time before I led my kids to the Lord. All my kids are saved. My whole house is. So if your family isn't saved, I'd be camping out in Acts 16, verse 25 to 34. Yeah. "Thou shalt be saved, and thy house." God, I just claim it. Well, here we see what God does. God has mercy. He says, "For thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation." I wrote down a couple of verses on that. Proverbs 10:2 says, "Righteousness delivereth from death." In case you missed it, Proverbs 11:4 says, "Righteousness delivereth from death." And in Proverbs 12:7 it says, "The wicked are overthrown and are not, but the house of the righteous shall stand." And we're going to see this. So let's pick up at verse 2. He says, "Of every clean beast shalt thou take of thee by sevens." Wait a minute. I thought it was by twos. Didn't he just say twos?
Sevens.
Now it's by sevens. What's the thing? So there's a lot of different ideas on this. I think, from what I've seen, the unclean animals by twos, the clean animals by sevens. In other words, there's a 2 and a 2 and a 2, and then this one. He'd be hanging out here waiting for something. Because when Noah gets off of the ark in chapter 8, in verse 20, it says, "And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar." If it would have been anyway, there would have been a messed up pairing if that would have been part of the pair. So on the ark, you get 2, 2, 2, and an extra one. That extra one is for the sacrifice. And he says, "Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female." Just like with men, God made animals, male and female. "Of fowls also, and of the air, by sevens, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth." In other words, to keep offspring around, because once this thing is all over, it's global, and we're going to have to repopulate. So verse 4 says, "For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth." So verse 1, he says, "Come into the ark, Noah. Come into the ark. Bring everything with you. For yet 7 days." I'm giving you a 1-week countdown. God often will let his righteous people know that something is going to happen. Remember back with Methuselah, his daddy named him, "When he dies, his death shall bring it." So sometimes, God will let the righteous know ahead of time because they have a personal relationship with him and he cares. Just like with Abraham when he was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. He says, "Shall I keep this thing hidden from Abraham?" So he goes and he talks to Abraham about it. So here God says, "For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Interesting thing about that, there is not enough water vapor in the air for it to rain for 40 days and 40 nights. So a lot of that water is going to have to come from somewhere else. We'll get to that in a little bit. He says, "And every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth." Verse 5, which is a repeat of chapter 6:22, "And Noah did according unto all that the Lord commanded him." If I was Noah, I'd be kind of just scared to death too. Because, not of God, but just what God is going to do. This is a fearful thing. "And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth? Nat has a question.
No, I have a statement. So you were talking about the 7 days advance notice. Amos 3:7 says, "Surely the Lord will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants, the prophets."
Ooh, so God reveals things to his servants, the prophets. What was that? Amos 3:7.
That's a good one.
Now, verse 7 of chapter 7, we're going to see 8 people are going into the ark. So verse 1, he said, come into the ark. Okay, that was kind of like, this is your apartment where you're going to be living for a while. This is your space. They didn't go in and stay in for that first week. They had to go in and out. They were bringing in animals and they were loading it up. It says in verse 7, and Noah went in, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him into the ark, because of the waters of the flood. So this is, again, he tells us in verse 1 through 6, he tells them to do something. He states that they did it. And then in verse 7, he's going to give that elaboration again. This is not him going into the ark a second time, because, you know, it already mentioned him being 600 years old. Now he's going in again. Some people, you just got to pay attention to it. And Noah went in, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him into the ark because of the waters of the flood, which were going to be coming. Of clean beasts, and of beasts that are not clean, and of fowls, and of everything that creepeth upon the earth. That's, creeping things are like your creepy crawlies. Bats are considered a creeping flying thing. Weasels are a creeping thing. Things that, they're not like a dog, but they kind of skitter a little bit. Mice.
Bugs?
Scorpions are considered a creeper.
Yeah, centipedes.
Locusts are considered a creeper. Then went in 2 and 2 unto Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as God had commanded Noah. And it came to pass, because God said it was, and it did, it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. Now this is my map, my little chart right here. And we're going to pop back and forth between this thing and me here. My little ark up here, and here's Noah. He's Leonardo da Vinci, if you don't know. That's the drawing. But anyway, so I took Leonardo, put him over there. Now this is going to give some chapter and verses. Chapter 7, verse 4, chapter 7, verse 11, chapter 7, verse 12. And it's going to give the year of Noah's life. 600th year, the month, the second month, the day, the 10th day. Now here in 11, verse 11, it says, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, that's when the rain comes. The only reason I put this on here was because 7 days earlier is whenever God had given the command to come. So we're going to see that this rain is going to be on the earth for 40 days. Just for my own little personal reference, I said that's going to be his 600th year, in the third month, in the 27th day. I used a 30-day month. In the Bible, whenever it talks about prophetical months, they're always 30 days. So I added 30 days plus 10. So it went from 17 to 27. And that's when the rain ends. But that's not whenever all the water stops. The water keeps going. And the next thing we're going to see is when we get to the end of chapter 7 in verse 24, it's going to talk about 150 days the water's been on the earth and God remembers Noah. The water abates and the ark rests upon Ararat. But that's not till 724. So let's back up here to 711. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day, were all the fountains of the great deep broken up. Now I want you to look at Job 38:16. Job 38:16. The fountains of the deep. This was not just a thunderstorm with rain coming down out of clouds. There's not enough water there. So God gets 2 more big water sources involved. In 38:16, God says to Job, hast thou entered into the springs of the sea? Hast thou walked in the search of the depth. In other words, the depth of the oceans. You know what? We can do that now. You can actually walk down in the Marianas Trench. But back in Job's day, people didn't know you could do that, but you can, and now we have. But it says, hast thou entered into the springs of the sea? That's the fountains of the deep. So back here in 7, in verse 11, it says, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up. So there's water that's trapped underneath of the surface of the earth. Even now there is. A study just came out showing a giant, almost an ocean. It covers almost all of Asia that is underneath of Asia that scientists have found. There's still water there. So what happened was this water that's trapped and super compressed under the Earth's mantle, under the top crust of the Earth, it starts letting loose water everywhere. So that's one of the sources. There's rain, there's the fountains, and it says, and the windows of heaven were opened. The windows of heaven seems to be a reference, and a lot of the commentators will say that there was water above the firmament. In other words, water above the sky that God had as a protective layer around the earth at that point. And God basically let that water drop in down on us. It did a couple of things. It flooded the earth, but it also removed a protective shield that keeps us safe from the solar radiation. That goes a long way toward us not living as long as Adam and Eve did, because that solar shield is now gone.
They called it the canopy.
They called it the canopy. Henry Morris, who was a great creation scientist, wrote a book on
the Genesis flood.
The Genesis flood is the title of it. And I mentioned last week, if you go back to the beginning of last week's Bible study, I gave you some websites that you can look at as well. So verse 12, and the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. In other words, the rain was just coming down from heaven, the windows of heaven and all this stuff coming down for 40 days and 40 nights. It's flooded out. Look in verse 13. In the self-same day that this all started happening, entered Noah, and it's going to name his sons now, and Shem, and Ham, and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife. We always call her Joan of Arc. We don't know her name, but that's a joke. And the 3 wives of his sons with them into the ark. They and every beast after his kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, every bird of every sort. You know what, just to stop here, God cares about the animals. The Bible says that not a sparrow won't even fall to the ground except the Lord knows it. He pays attention to all the animals too. Verse 15, and they went in unto Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. Remember, not the fish. And they that went in male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. So God closes the door. There was one door on the ark. Kind of put a little picture of it right here, if you can see it. And that's zooming. Trying to zoom in. We don't know how big it was, but it had to be pretty massive. So we always think of it as a really big door on the side of the ark, centrally located, so that they can get in there. All right? And the Lord shut him in. Noah didn't shut the door. God shut it. That means he was eternally secure. If God shuts it, no man's going to open it. Verse 17, and the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bare up the ark. So that ark, it's huge, heavy, and waters are starting to go up. And it says, and bear up the ark, and it was lift up above the earth. And the waters prevailed. That word means to have power, like if you're fighting against a wrestler and you prevail against him. The water is beating the earth at this point. And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went upon the face of the waters, and the waters prevailed exceedingly. So first they prevailed, now they're going to prevail exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. So first it went over the ground, now it's covered the hills. Verse 20, 15 cubits upward did the water prevail, and the mountains were covered. 15 cubits comes out to 15 times 1.5 is about 23, 22 feet above the mountains. So it was very, very, very a lot of water.
They were covered.
They were covered. They were covered because he said he was going to. And you got to think about it. If there's that much water, there's going to be giant waves slapping upside this boat. There is nothing to stand in the way of giant waves, and the wind is howling, and the fountains of the deep are opening up, and water is sloshing everywhere. And that boat is doing one of these things. Interesting thing that we do know. If you look at barges and ships that carry things, the proportions of the ark were the exact correct proportions not to be tipped over.
Yeah.
God is amazing. They've actually done experiments on that. What's the right width and length in order not to tip over? And they came up with a shoebox. With a shoebox, and that's what it was, a shoebox. All right, and the waters prevailed up above the mountains. Verse 21, one of the saddest verses in all the Bible. And all flesh died that move upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beast and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man. If you don't think God will, don't push him. He will. Every man. I got thinking about this. Wow, what is that like? I can't even go there. These guys are up in the boat, and we're going to see that this flood's going to go on for over a year without planting, a year without harvest, a year without swimming in a swimming pool, a year without anything. Nat.
So, knowing that the earth is like 6,000 years old, this happened. They were on the earth before the flood, roughly 2,300, 2,300 years. They were living to be 900 years old. They were begetting. They had children all over.
There were millions of people.
When people read this story, they tend to think of Noah the Amish man with a very loose population. But we're talking probably over 1 billion people on the planet, probably even closer to 2 billion people on the planet.
It's already mentioned cities way back when. There's cities, there's infrastructure, all of it.
Right. This wasn't like God wiped out 50,000 people. This was billion people due to their sin.
Yeah, and all the animals and everything else.
Yes.
And it says, and every man. Verse 22, all in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land, died. All the giants died. We talked about them. All the giants died. And every living substance was destroyed, which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowl of the heaven, and they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. Now you might want to zoom back in on the map. So that, the rains start in 7/11. 150 days later, which is 5 months, 30 days each, 5 months, takes us right here. Noah is now 600 years old, 7 months and 17 days, and the Bible says that God remembers him. And we just keep it focused on there. Chapter 8, verse 1. And God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God did 4 things to start making the water go away. Verse 1, God made a wind to pass over the earth, kind of start to dry it up. And the waters were assuaged. That is, they started to subside. They were softened. They were mitigated. In verse 2 it says, the fountains of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped. That's number 2 and number 3. So there's a wind, the fountains and the windows of the heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. So God's just cut off all water sources now. He's just going to let this stuff drain and settle. And the waters return from off the earth continually. And after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated. Now that is the same 150 days as verse 24 of 7. Otherwise, the timeline doesn't work. So this right here is chapter 7, verse 24, but also chapter 8, verse 4 is right here. And it says in verse 4 of chapter 8, and the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. It does not say the mountain of Ararat, but the mountains of Ararat. You can bring us back in, I guess. A lot of people went looking on the mountain of Ararat and they couldn't find it, so they figured that God was a liar. No, but it's over there. It's actually in Armenia. A lot of people have seen it. You can do the research on that yourself. That's a wonderful thing. It's been seen many times. People have collected wood from it. It has, I believe, 6 giant anchor stones around it. But the government, I think it's the one in Armenia, has blocked anybody going up into there. It could be Turkey. I always get the two confused. But anyway, it's still there. And it says in verse 5, and the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. So all of this is stopped, and we go from the 7th month, the 17th day, they come to rest on Ararat, and then Noah grabs out his notebook about 2.5 months later and makes a note. I can see mountaintops now. He makes a note, he puts it in his diary, puts it in his captain's log. The USS Noah's Ark, puts it in there. Verse 6, and it came to pass at the end of 40 days, that's verse 6, that's going to take us over here to the 11th month and the 11th day, because remember we had 30 days to get to the next month, and then another 10 days to get to 40 days. So we see that. And Noah opened the window of the ark, which he had made. I love that. God gives him credit. And he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. So he sets the raven out, and the raven comes back. And the raven goes out, and the raven comes back. And the raven goes out, and the raven comes back. The raven has got the option to go and stay away, but he always comes back.
Yeah, but ravens also are different because they're carrion, so they can eat
dead things.
If he finds a dead thing, he didn't have to come back.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point. And that says that ravens eat carrion.
They like roadkill.
They like roadkill. Mm-hmm. So, but he just keeps coming back. Also, he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand, and he took her, and pulled her in unto him into the ark. And he stayed yet another 7 days. He waits another week, verse 10, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came in to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. So she's actually found an olive leaf. She found something to bring back. Do you think, Nat, that the trees were that God was spontaneously bringing back vegetation, or was this just floaty stuff?
I have no idea.
One of the things that gets me is how long it takes to grow things. And they're going to be in the ark for a year, and they're going to get off, and there's not going to be nothing but mud everywhere because it's going to take 30 years to get a tree. And I wonder sometimes if this isn't like the Adam and Eve creation, and God doesn't give them the trees back right away. Because if you remember from Adam and Eve, the story of the Garden of Eden, God makes the garden, and he plants it in a moment, and so there's full-grown trees for them to grab the fruit off of in sin. God didn't wait 30, 40, 50 years for the trees to grow. He put them in there full grown. And so sometimes I wonder if God didn't do the same thing here, because she's grabbing an olive leaf plucked off, not floating around old nasty olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth, and he stayed yet another 7 days. And he sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more, which means that she's found a way to survive. So there's insects and there's green things. And then verse 13, it says, and it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And Nat says,
Happy birthday, Noah.
Happy birthday. Because remember, we're going by Noah's timeline.
Those are his years. He's the one that's 600 years.
He's the 600 years. So he enters in on the second month, the 17th day. And over here, on the 601st year, first month, first day, he says for his birthday, I think I'm going to remove the cover off of this thing, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. That doesn't mean he's going to go outside yet. Still, everything is still a little wet and damp. And so in the second month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dry. There's a difference between the ground being dry and the earth being dry and ready to build houses on and start a garden and whatever. So it says in verse 15, and God spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife and thy sons' wives with thee. Everybody survived.
Yeah.
Everybody survived. Heck of a year. You know, they survived a year in quarantine. They were in lockdown without Netflix. They didn't have cell phones. They couldn't call a friend. They only had one board game. That's a joke, but they... You know, they're taking care of animals. Noah's the first zookeeper.
Yeah.
And his children kind of inherited the business. So there he is as a zookeeper, feeding animals. What are we going to do today? We're going to clean up after the elephants. Oh, not again. What are we going to do today? We're going to feed the pigs. Oh, here we go, slopping pigs. For a whole year. And so on the 601st year, second month, 27th day, it's dry, and God says, Go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife and thy sons' wives with thee. Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee, of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. By the way, dinosaurs were there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have a record of them. But anyway, dinosaurs were there. If you read in the book of Job,
Unicorns.
there are dinosaurs. There are unicorns mentioned in the book of Job. There's all kinds of fun things. David mentions a unicorn too.
Flying fiery serpents.
Yeah, all kinds of weird things were on this ark. That they may breed abundantly in the earth. Rabbits took that to heart. He says, and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. Verse 18. And Noah went forth, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, and every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth, after their kinds, went forth out of the ark. I always picture in my head how people walk with sea legs. You ever been on something that's wobbly, and then you get off and you stand on dry land, and you can't really walk right, and they're all descending that ramp, all kind of wobbling. I don't know, that's just a picture in my head. Verse 20, and Noah builded an altar unto the Lord. Now that is the first altar on this world since the flood. And he took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl and offered burnt offerings on the altar. It was a total consecration, was what the burnt offering means. In some of the offerings, they would just offer like a quarter or a piece of the animal. On a burnt offering, it's a total burn up. It's a total 100% consecration, nothing held back. Boy, now there's a good sermon for a Friday night, for a Friday talk. Burnt offering. Is your life a burnt offering? Are you totally 100% consecrated to God, or are you holding something back? Don't do it. It's not worth it. Noah said, I'm not holding anything back. He's just lived through the death of everything. The mayor of his city, all the policemen, everybody. The doctor that Noah went to see, dead. His dentist, dead. Noah, the Bible says that Noah was a preacher of righteousness. He knew this stuff was coming because his granddaddy's name Melchizedek, or not Melchizedek, Methuselah. Methuselah, when he dies, his death shall bring it. So he preached righteousness, but nobody made it. Verse 21, and the Lord smelled a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing as I have done. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. And they literally had just spent a year without seed time and harvest. And God says, we're going to start over. We're not going to do that anymore. Another little sermon that I see in this, guys, is some trials are long and tedious, but God is with you. Sometimes it feels like God has shut the door and locked you into a trial, and you can't get out. Don't worry. He's with you. He is with you, even in the darkness. It's dark in the ark. There's only one window. I always think that God must have made some glowy light worms or something in there, because how did those animals survive for a year without light? We don't know. It may have been that God caused a deep sleep to fall on all of them, and they slept the whole year through. We don't know. We don't know any of the details. All we know is that it was long and tedious, and there were 8 people that got tired of seeing each other. And eventually, God did let them out. Verse 9, I got to read down to the little bit. I got to read down to the rainbow. Chapter 9, and God blessed Noah and his sons and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. Even as the green herb have I given you all things, but flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall you not eat. Don't eat blood. And surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of man, at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. If there's a Cain who kills his brother Abel, he's not going to get off scot-free now. God says, I'm going to put some rules in place. It's verse 6, Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. That's capital punishment. For in the image of God made he man. And you, he says to Noah, be ye fruitful and multiply. Bring forth abundantly in the earth. That's the second time. And multiply therein. And God spake unto Noah and to his sons with him, saying, And I, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you. That's me. That's me. This is a promise to my great-great-great-great-granddaddy Noah. And it's to me, God, this is the first covenant that God made with me.
Yeah.
Look at that. That's the first covenant God made with you. He says, and with every living creature that is, the Bible is, it's applicable. This applies to you. And with every living creature that is with you, that applies to your dog too. And of the fowl and the cattle, and of every beast of the earth with you. From all that go out of the ark to every beast of the earth. And I will establish my covenant with you. Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood. Neither shall there any more be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, This is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud. I love it. And it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. People are looking for, people say, every cloud has its silver lining. I don't care about the silver lining. God says every cloud has a bow in it. That's the mercy of God. Every trial has the mercy of God in it. Every storm has the mercy of God in it. He says, and I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you, and every living creature that is of the flesh. And the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it. You know what I like about the bow? The bow is red on top. From God's view, he sees the blood, the red. When we look up from the bottom, at the bottom is blue. And when we get in Exodus, you'll see that that's the holiness of God. We see the holiness, and he sees the mercy. That's just a tidbit. Throw that in there. That I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. Let's go ahead and stop there. Let's close in prayer and just say thank you, Jesus, because God is good. Father, we thank you so much. Men were wicked, and you destroyed them. All men died. But you also saved a remnant. 8 people saved by the righteousness that God gave to them, by the mercies of God. Lord, we're going through some tough times. Everybody's locked up right now. We feel like a dog or 2 dogs is driving us crazy. I just think about Noah, locked up with his family for a whole year. My, what prayer meetings they must have had. What revival. With the terrors of God all around them. But they stay close to you. And Father, I pray as we go through this storm that we're going through, that we would just stay close to you and remember that you are merciful. We love you a lot, Jesus. We love you a lot. Amen.